EJ.
For being
Be
drunk.
proud. Be proud of all of me.
Is Butch here?
Yeah, what the hell? The hell, man? One of you shows up and another one leaves. Jesus.
No, he shut up. Is he? Butch, are you recording? You son of a
Yeah.
bitch. Yeah,
Let's go, man. 4 of us. Jesus.
I've been recording since yesterday. Lexi just got home.
No, actually, I was home since 7.
You know what I've been doing since 7 o'clock? Watching Quantum Leap.
Holy shit.
Watching.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
I found a source for all the 5 seasons, and then me and Jad began with season 1 about 2 hours ago. It's fun.
What's Quantum Leap again?
Quantum Leap is a time travel. Quantum Leap is a time travel story with Scott Bakula, and
Yeah.
Dean Stockwell, and then he's like he hops from person to person, from time to time, righting wrongs.
Oh, yeah. I think it's an old show.
Yeah.
Yep, it is.
Right.
Very old.
It sounds,
the premise-
Chinese. Quantum Leap.
Kung Tong Lee.
Quantum Leap.
What the
And
fuck?
then-
You guys are really racist, man. What the fuck?
He's trapped in time, and then the only way
Yeah.
for him to get back to his own time is to do good deeds like me.
Oh, yeah. Song
Why
Leap.
does he have to do that?
What?
Why does he have to do that?
I don't know, actually.
I mean,
I'm gonna
what's
find
forcing?
out.
Well, I mean, is there a being that's? No, I mean, what's forcing him to do these deeds before he has to get back? I mean, what's the dynamic there?
There's a hint. There's a hint that a lot of it has a lot to do with God or whatever, or time being a sentient entity. It's weird. It becomes weird later on, but like I said, I'm just on the 3rd episode of the 1st season, so
Okay.
good times though.
First episode.
Bakula in Quantum
What time is he
Leap.
from? Is he from 1980, 1990s, whatever?
For some reason, they're withholding that information from him, but in the first episode, he's in 1955.
Oh, they never explain it.
Oh,
Yeah.
So
and
mysterious.
it's good. Like what? The dialogue holds up and everything.
I would say so, because it jumps from time to time, so there isn't really a formal
I see what you did there.
flavor of dialogue.
So
So
from time to time.
it changes. It changes depending on the era they're at, but you know, it works for the most part. Welcome to Just Comic Heroes, the #1 time jumping podcast in the Philippines. We're gonna talk about comics and TV shows and comic book films or whatever, and that type of news. My name is John Moore. I'll be your host for this evening.
My name is EJ of Jesus, and I'm sufficiently intoxicated.
All right, that's Alex Cipriano. Alex
What's up,
Nicodemus
what's up?
Cipriano. Well, yeah, what's up? And Butch Mapa Esquire.
I did not go to Europe.
Not yet.
What's that?
Not yet.
Butch Mapa in Kantong Lee.
Kung Tong Lee.
Just Comic Heroes is the #1 comics review podcast in the Philippines, and you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Podcast Republic, and on Facebook. And we are a proud member of the Comics Podpap Network. And
We are.
yeah. We're gonna cover a little bit of news. I don't know which one of you saw Logan already. Is it any
Not
good?
yet.
No?
Not yet.
Nah, yeah, all I've heard, I mean, even Metacritic has been really kind. So that's what I'm surprised about. I'm like, normally, even if Rotten Tomatoes has show really high ratings, even Metacritic kind of, you don't know where they're gonna go. But holy crap, man! Even there, it's doing okay. So I'm curious.
All my friends are saying it's great, and there was that bit of news before that said that it ended to standing ovation at its test screening or whatever,
Jesus.
Sure.
and cynics were like, yeah, but it was all Hugh Jackman's family watching. That's all it was. his children. Or I think it was Butch who said that, actually. Butch, have you seen it yet?
No, not yet.
Let's give him a standing ovation because he survived cancer for the 6th time.
Yeah, that bogan. Actually, I plan to see it this week, but I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna change my
too.
life around just to see it. I'm not the biggest Wolverine fan, but if I got nothing to do,
Yeah, it's like you don't like the popular characters so much.
that's not true. I love Batman, and Superman. Maybe I'm just not a Marvel guy.
I respect that.
You know who else respects Stress Comic Heroes? Marvel themselves. They value our opinion because right after we fan casted Ramsay Snow, they for real casted him as Maximus the Mad for the
Yeah, that's
Inhumans
true.
TV show.
Right
I was
after.
like, holy shit, this actually happened.
So who's managing their TV stuff right now? Is it Jeff Loeb or is
Yeah.
is Jeff Loeb on DC? It's Jeff Loeb.
Jeff Loeb.
All right, good job, Jeff. I know you're listening. Kevin, you're all right. They also cast Serinda
Kevin Featherline.
Swan.
Kevin,
Serinda
hell?
Swan. Are
where
you
did that
familiar?
come from? Yes, I am familiar. I used to watch Smallville. She's hot.
Yeah, she is hot. I only saw her in Zatanna. I'm sorry, not Zatanna. I saw her in Tron Legacy,
Yeah.
and I was like, that mannequin is hot. Not saying anything.
Wait. Okay, that I didn't know. Who was she there?
She was one of the ladies who measured the main character, Sam, or whatever his name is, get his proportions.
Wow.
No, I just saw her as
Unintentionally
Zatanna
creepy.
in Smallville, and she was wow. She really fit that. As in Alex Ross style. That was amazing.
She fit. Was she in
She fit
fishnets?
that. Yeah. I think.
Butch will like that.
Exactly.
Do you think she's a good fit for Karnak? I'm sorry, Medusa.
Speaking of that, that was also casted, and I'm not so sure. It really depends, because I mean I don't have a great handle on how Medusa is gonna be, and I know Regal, and she's not too flamboyant, except for her hair. Yeah, her hair is everywhere. But
Buoyant.
she's got a regal vibe about her, and I mean,
The answer is yes. She's perfect.
I'm not sure
Yes.
how they're going to stretch.
Okay.
What?
Well, I know which lady is gonna be on our banner this episode or this week.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I think she could pull it. I just don't know how they're gonna lead the character into a more dramatic. What do you call this? To stretch the role, make it more challenging. And I don't know if Serinda Swan is capable of that. But from what I know of the character, I think she's capable enough.
From what I've read of the Inhumans comics, I cannot tell you what Medusa's personality is. Medusa, I feel like, is one of those curvy ladies from the 60s who never really came into her own. But I could have just not read enough.
It feels a little generic. Like she could be any queen.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's true.
Okay.
Hopefully they add
Oh,
some.
there you are.
So she can pull it off.
And also, the three of you don't watch trailers. I found out a few episodes ago.
What? Yeah, I don't.
Okay, yeah. But this past week, we saw the release of the final. Was it final? Or a new Alien
Power
Covenant
Rangers.
trailer? I don't know if you guys saw
Sorry,
that.
what? Aliens? Oh, Aliens Covenant.
Yeah.
I don't need to watch that. I'm definitely gonna see that movie anyway.
The new, possibly final Kong of Skull Island trailer.
That was nice.
Oh, I saw that.
Oh, you saw that?
Yeah, it has a big monkey.
I don't know,
It is
man.
big ape, actually.
It showed
Yeah,
up in
same thing.
what was I doing, man? I was.
You were
I
drunk,
couldn't-
probably.
I couldn't. No, what the hell, man? I'm not drunk. I'm just drunk right now.
Okay.
Oh, he's off the wagon again.
Jeez. Alright, but it was good. It was fun. I'm looking forward to it. I really want to watch it.
Not sure how I feel about what's his name? What's his name?
Loki?
The funny
Samuel
guy.
L. Jackson.
No, no.
The funny guy,
Jeremy Renner.
the stepbrother.
What's his name?
No,
From
the stepbrother.
Brothers?
What are you
Yeah.
talking about?
Oh my shit. Whatever.
Ron
the
Burgundy's
dude
brother.
with the katana.
Whose brother?
Yeah, I forget.
Yeah, whatever that guy's name is. I feel like having him and John Goodman in the same movie is like you don't know where the comic relief is supposed to come from. Or, I could be completely wrong. Maybe John Goodman's not supposed to be funny in this. And
No,
it'll
I
be
don't
good.
think he is.
Maybe he's King Kong.
Oh my god.
You don't
Yeah,
know
maybe.
that.
Moving
Thanks,
on.
man.
And lastly, the final trailer or the new trailer for Guardians of the Galaxy came out this week.
Yep.
We
No,
get.
didn't see that either.
Oh, you didn't see that, but we
No, I didn't
don't
see
really
that.
see. We don't see Thanos at all because this doesn't have anything to do with Thanos apparently, and they're gonna have this
What?
fresh quest that
Okay.
may or may not. I like to think it actually won't lead into anything that has to do with Infinity War.
That's
And-
strange though, because there's still one more gem.
There is.
And so where is that supposed to pop up? He'll find it in the Infinity War na.
Maybe. Or maybe,
Maybe.
it's completely possible that Thanos already has a gem and we just don't know about it.
Oh. Okay.
I mean, he is pretty powerful, so.
Oh yeah, but he doesn't have all the gems. He still has to get them though.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that okay, they can I think have to introduce one more.
Mhm.
But okay. Yeah. Let's leave it for the war.
So you guys didn't see it at all? None of you?
Yeah, not me.
It's certainly more high impact than the trailer for the first one. Like, you see a lot of action in this. Whereas in the first one, it was very subdued and it was just about the characters.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's just that I'm just hoping they introduce someone more interesting than Mantis. I know there's Baby Groot, but there are more interesting characters in this cosmic, what do you call this? Universe. It's gonna be great, but
They're introducing his father.
yeah, I know. And it's Russell, what's it? Kurt Russell.
Russell Brand.
Kurt Russell Crowe.
Whatever, man. I mean, I was really disappointed with how they tackled the Nova Corps. I was hoping for real Novas,
Right.
Mhm.
and they didn't do. And not, Marvel has been really great at interpreting their characters, and I'm
They
like,
had Nova chips.
this is how they tackle the Nova Corps. I mean, it's not budget because they did like all thousands of spaceships doing whatever bullshit.
Mhm.
So why couldn't they just do that? Would have been cool.
Maybe the Nova Corps men that we saw were like the CIA of the galaxy, and then the Rick Ryder Novas are like the Navy SEALs.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, I'll accept that for now.
Yeah.
'Cause I
Glenn
have no
Close
choice.
as Rick Ryder.
God damn it. I'd like a Nova, man. I'd like to see a Nova.
Oh,
I
me
like
too.
the Novas.
Well, Maybelline.
Maybe it's Maybelline.
I was about
Are you wearing
hopefully.
shoes? Are you wearing their shoes or their makeup?
Jeez, am I drunk? Am I EJ? But hopefully, like in Phase 5 or Phase 6, we see more cosmic heroes.
Phase 5 or Phase 6? What the hell phase are we in now?
Phase 3.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe what's phase 4?
3. Maria Luisa. I don't know when Phase 4 is coming.
Phase
but
4 is.
That's all we've got.
Is Phase 4 Infinity War already?
Infinity War caps off Phase 3.
Okay.
I could be completely wrong.
Oh.
I'm not a member of the Marvel Zombies podcast. Shout out, name drop. Let's move on to some comic books. Who read some comics this week, guys?
I read some comics this week.
Mm-hmm.
Go for it.
on.
Oh, do I go first?
Sure.
Okay, upon Alex's suggestion, I picked up Black Magick. It's not the newest comic book. Apparently, it came out 2015. Written by Greg Rucka, and I'm forgetting who the artist is. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, she did Secret 6.
Yeah, Nicola.
There it is. Because I was looking at art the whole time, and I'm like, holy crap, this art looks really familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, reminds me of Secret Six, like a lot. And that's one of the reasons why I really love that. Not only was the writing great by Gail Simon, but the artist was great, Nicola. She's fantastic. And
Wait.
again, what?
Is it? Oh, when you're saying Gail Simone, you're talking about Secret Six, right? Not.
Yes, I'm talking about Secret Six. Greg Rucka wrote Black Magick.
Okay.
Okay, so I read. It's short and sweet. Well, not so sweet, but it's short. It's like 5 issues. There are only 5 issues out there. It's painful. It's a story about a witch. It's interesting. They start off like they're in this witch circle doing some kind of ritual, and they're all half naked. Well, pretty much naked. They just have robes on and shit. And the lead character, her name is something black.
Rowan.
Yeah. And she gets a call that she has to leave. It's her job. Apparently, she's a detective. She's a cop. And she starts to discover that this faction that has been hunting her kind, witches, apparently, for a while, is starting to ramp up their activities again. But as the series goes on, they start to find out, is it really this faction called the Hammer that's hunting them? They never use magic, but apparently there's a lot of magic going on that's working against them. And is that really what's happening? And it ends in a way, the current arc anyway, that I don't know what to make of it. There are some supernatural characters behind the scenes that are manipulating things, but for the most part, it feels like a supernatural crime drama that's happening, with the lead character being a witch cop. It seems like they did a lot of research talking about the witchcraft, the spells. You can even read from the letters page of the comic that there are a lot of people that are quite happy with how Greg Rucka treated the magic and the witchcraft of the book. It's quite interesting. Yes, it's a little dark and gritty. Alex thought I didn't like that stuff. Come on, man. I like dark and gritty. I said I'd like there to be dialogue. I don't like it to be too much exposition, too much narration without the pace of the story moving along at a decent clip. But it really depends. In this case, I found the pacing to be quite well. The characters pretty well fleshed out. Even though there are only 5 issues, you get to know the lead characters and some of the characters surrounding her pretty well. It's a decent book, and it's nice to see to read something from Greg Rucka outside of his DC stuff. I think this is something worth recommending. It's only 5 issues, and apparently a 6th one is coming out this year. The only reason why apparently it didn't start sooner is because of Rebirth.
Wonder Woman.
Yeah, Rucka was needed for that, right? They needed services to that, so he couldn't continue his work on Black Magick.
Well, Nicholas Scott was also busy, so.
What was she doing?
Wonder Woman.
Okay, so both of them were working on it at the same time as partners also. Wow, are they a package deal?
It's like they like each other.
Well, it's them and Liam Sharp, really. So they're Nicholas Scott and Liam Sharp are alternating on that book, but I imagine they work months ahead, so that probably kept her busy for a while.
Streets ahead.
Streets ahead. I actually read the first issue of this, and as soon as I finished reading it, I immediately contacted Budget and I was like, Budge, have you read Black Magic? Because it is. I mean, it's practically Trece, except it's American, right? It's a witch cop dealing with some, supernatural stuff. And, the similarities were just fairly, you can't really ignore it. I'm sure Greg Rucka didn't take the idea, from Budget, or, you never know. But I just thought it would be interesting for Budget to check this out. I actually haven't spoken to him since I told him about it.
I felt the Kambals are a pretty unique set of characters. There are things from Tressa that does not translate into Black Magic. I mean, the leads are similar, but I don't know. I think there are enough differences here.
Sure.
What do you call this? I think Budget is fine.
I'll finish this. You said it's only 5 issues?
It's only 5 issues, man. It's really worth.
Sixth one is coming up in April.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, they're gonna continue again. I'm happy about that. I mean, like, suddenly I start something. It's like, what is this? The cliffhanger. It ends like with a cliffhanger that leaves you asking like a hell of a ton of questions. So I'm hoping that there's more. The art is fantastic. Again, a huge fan of Secret 6. Nicola does fantastic work here. And it's not even fully colored.
Yeah.
It's got a darker style, and I was debating first. I was like, oh, man, am I digging this? I mean, it's working, but as you read, it's like, man, this is fantastic. This works quite a bit. Just hoping for more.
Yeah.
Maybe it didn't earn enough money to keep doing more stuff, but they're gonna keep doing it. I just hope that the series picks up. So,
or like you said, they're just busy.
Yeah, or maybe they're just busy.
Yeah.
But I hope they get busy with this, man. Do more Black Magic.
I want to hear from somebody who's been quiet most of this episode.
Yeah, I know.
Butch, what you been reading, man?
Me, I got nothing.
Oh, I thought you were gonna cram some stuff in for for this evening.
Yeah, no.
You been busy too?
Pretty much. My cousin gave me the X-Men Days of Future Past. What is it? I'm not sure if it's an omnibus or a hardcover, and I want to review that, but it's kind of thick, so.
I've never read that. Is that John Byrne?
Yeah, I haven't read it either too. It's like this super classic thing, so I'm excited. I'll get to it sometime.
There's a lot of classic X-Men stories I haven't read. I think I've only read the whole Phoenix thing. That's it.
I haven't read Infinite Crisis, so.
You mean Crisis on Infinite Earths?
Yeah, that one, the first one.
Okay. Lex.
Never shame.
Let's tag team on something we enjoyed last week.
Sure.
It's called
Pineapple.
No, I don't enjoy that ever.
Okay.
We saw Shin Godzilla.
Oh.
Also known as Meetings, the movie.
Okay.
It is.
I heard you talking about that.
Is the latest installment of the Godzilla franchise from Toho Animation, I believe, and this was directed by Hideaki Anno. Most popularly known as the director for most, if not all, and probably the creator, I could be wrong, but the creator of the Neon Genesis Evangelion series.
Nice.
And as such, it literally feels like a real, live action translation of an Evangelion movie, except instead of angels, it's Godzilla as the main protagonist of the film. Lex, what'd you think?
I wasn't expecting it to be too anime, but we really enjoyed it. We watched it on the plane, and I keep on telling you that it's like Meetings, the movie, because like, oh shit, it's Godzilla, let's have a meeting. It's,
It's literally like that, yeah.
yeah, it's really like that. So there's lots of scenes where there's just guys sitting in meeting rooms, conference rooms, lots of
Planning,
talking,
yeah.
planning. Yeah, so lots of politics involved in the movie. But like John said, it added the needed realism that the movie required for it to feel like it's happening in the real world. Because if you compare it to most Western movies or the Western versions of Godzilla, it's mostly military people doing all the decision making.
Yeah, and there's always one soldier who survives every
Yeah.
attack, and he always
So
happens to be in all the different places. I'm like, come on.
so it's the the way the movie was done. I think it's a mix of practical effects, right, and
Yeah.
miniatures. So
Hmm.
that was really good. The level of destruction was enjoyable for a Godzilla movie, and the way they presented him, because at first he wasn't a full blown monster. Like he evolved into slowly evolved until he got into his final form, which
He's like
is
a
uh,
giant tadpole in the beginning.
yeah, which was
Oh,
yeah, which was
Gross.
really interesting because you get to know the creature as the same way how the characters in the movie are getting to
is
discover well, what kind of creature Godzilla is.
is
Hmm.
he
But
CG? Is he CG?
It's a
I think
mix.
it's a mix. Yeah, it's a mix.
Okay. So there's man in suit stuff in there.
Really?
I'm actually not sure. I'm honestly not sure, but it's
It
campy
looks like it.
enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some
Okay.
some scenes look like there's a man in a suit just smashing miniature buildings, but it's fun. If
Hmm.
it feels very Hideaki Anno, it's very Evangelion,
Hmm.
less minus the robots, but um, it's really good. I liked it. My wife Caroline watched it also on the plane, and she also enjoyed it.
Hmm.
So that's her first taste of Hideako Anno's weirdness.
What's the name of the guy who directed Rogue One? Butch, do you know this?
uh,
Nope.
Gareth Edwards, right?
Oh, the Godzilla guy?
Yeah. Yeah, he also directed the American Godzilla, and I feel like Hideaki Anno is one of those directors who handles scale really well, possibly because he handled the Evangelion stuff. And some of the best combat stuff from Evangelion is when you see the tiny military, the tanks and stuff, all coordinating to attack this giant monster in the distance. And when Anno handles that, I mean, it looks spectacular because the CG in this is just enough that Godzilla looks kind of campy, but he's supposed to, right? He's a giant monster, but all the vehicles look 100% realistic. Like all the
nice.
firepower, all the ground troops. Well, there aren't really any ground troops, but like all the vehicles and stuff, they look really authentic. And that's one thing I always enjoyed about Evangelion is that there's a real weight to all these human firepower attacks on the monster, and you for real, because there's real destruction in this. You feel the immensity of the threat of the monster. Like in the American movies, you're always supposed to somehow sympathize with Godzilla. Here, he's just a force of nature, and he's really scary in this.
Nice.
Hmm.
Wait, so
And
which one did you guys enjoy more, the American version or this one?
This one, for
Well,
me,
the American version has Elizabeth Olsen, so so it comes out even in the end. But I actually enjoyed the Godzilla scenes in this a little bit more. He has new powers, right, Lex?
Uh-oh.
yep, which
So
was yeah, that was it's really good.
it's pretty crazy. Uh, and it sort of ends on a weird teaser for
Spoil
a
it.
possible second movie.
Spoil the powers.
Okay. The powers are, how he normally is only able to project his laser from his mouth. In this, they drop multiple. They attack him with multiple drones and bombs from the sky,
Right?
and the spikes on his back all can fire lasers in this movie
Yeah.
Interesting.
in different directions too,
Different
apparently.
directions.
So it's crazy. And he was able to wipe out all the drones that were coming at him with the radiation or the whatever rays came out of his spikes. So it's pretty cool.
Nice.
I enjoyed it. It's still worth the watch. I didn't spoil anything really. There's it's not really government versus Godzilla. It's more bureaucracy versus Godzilla, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
If you're expecting like lots of action, lots of intense moments where Godzilla is fighting against,
One guy.
one guy, and yeah, it's not. It's most like 80 to 90%
Godzilla doesn't
is
fight.
people talking. Yeah,
Godzilla doesn't fight a monster.
no, he
Not
doesn't.
in this. No.
Oh,
No.
that's surprising coming from a Japanese Godzilla movie.
Yeah, he fights Japan.
Yeah, he fights
Wow.
Japan like as a country.
So it's really, so everyone going Godzilla.
There's some of that.
Japan versus Godzilla and what the government will do
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
in case
Pretty
of
cool.
situations like this.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice.
Yeah, check it out.
You should.
Lex, what did you read this week?
I like EJ said, we had a book exchange. So
Lexi.
he read Black Magic, and in exchange, I read Deadly Class
Ooh.
from Rick Remender and
It's his favorite book of last year.
EJ.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's Rick Remender
One of them. One of
and
them.
what's his name? Wes Craig. Forgot.
Craig David. Wes Craig.
Wes Craig. Yeah. So Deadly Class is about a guy, an orphan who was admitted to a school for assassins.
Mm-hmm.
But I read the first arc, or the first volume. It's basically a high school book.
No.
Like a text.
Yeah, it's like a guy when you go to to high school, and how his relationships are with his friends, what teenagers go through. Yeah, it's like a coming of age story
Oh man.
in a high school, but just wrapped into this assassin world thing. It's kind it's I find it fresh considering it's written by Rick Remender,
Mm-hmm.
whose books I most of his books that I've read are the sci-fi stories. So um, at first I wasn't that uh, I didn't buy into the book, but as I finished through the art, I think it's one of his lighter books. Even
Light.
if even if there's a lot of violence in the book, but the overall theme in it is like what what happened what happens in high school, because this one is set in the 80s, so there's lots of references of 80s pop culture in it. But yeah,
Isn't it a
it's school
weird
for
school
assassins.
though? Oh, yeah.
It's found underground,
Mm-hmm.
and the students are like sons of uh, criminals, gangsters, and stuff. So yeah, it's like it's like a typical. It's like an anime, I think,
Huh.
where there's high school for assassins, but only in an American comics form, and it's written by
Interesting.
Rick Remender. It
Each,
is
would you
interesting.
say that's a fair assessment of the book?
I accept it.
Ooh, controversy.
I'll allow it. I'll allow it.
I'll allow
Thank you, each.
it.
I mean, I have only read the first issue, and I don't know if if it gets lighter as the story progresses, but that felt pretty heavy to me. I mean, it begins with his parents getting killed
Yeah,
by
It's not.
a
it's
jumper.
not
It,
exactly that light, but considering Rick Remender's other books where um, not light in a sense where there's less violence, but his other books are into heavy sci-fi,
Hard
um,
sci-fi.
high fantasy, and stuff like that. This one is like high school stuff
Mm. Heavy
with
except
school.
with
they're
more
all training
violence.
to be super evil.
Yeah, yeah, like more violence and drugs. But
So it's like
How
Harry
many
basically,
Potter, except they kill
how
each
many
other.
issues did you read, man?
Six,
the first volume,
Wow.
six,
I think
five,
that's
six.
six. It's the trade.
Okay,
Okay.
cool.
Cause yeah, shit happens in somewhere in the latter stuff where remember still does his thing where people close to the main character they end up dying off one by one. uh, but it's I mean it's
Yeah, I'm
imagine
not
if you
saying
just
it's that light, but it's just
no,
that
it's not. Yeah.
yeah,
But I get what you mean. I mean,
yeah, okay.
Remender writes some really, really dark shit when he wants to. Um, not in Marvel.
That's true.
Not in Marvel, but his usual stuff. And this is probably on the lighter end of the spectrum.
Yeah. That's what
But
I'm trying to say.
when you're talking about Remender scale, so you gotta adjust your expectations as well as to what light means for this guy.
That's true. I feel like Remender is one of the. I mean, the show Tres Comiqueros began in like 2009. I feel like Rick
Uh-huh.
Remender has been talked about almost, at least once a month since then. We have always had a Rick Remender book that at least one of us enjoys.
Rick Remender built this show.
We built this city.
Dude, Remender is like doing interesting stuff. I mean,
Always.
that's why he's always in the conversation.
I'm gonna bring up somebody else though. Written by Rick Remender is Tokyo Ghost.
Oh boy.
And I read 10 issues. The first arc really feels like it wraps up at 10 issues actually, and they did mention that they're gonna take a break after this because the first main story ends. I actually talked about the first issue of Tokyo Ghost already in a previous episode, but I just want to make a refresher here. In the future, where Los Angeles has apparently been submerged by rising sea levels, and quite possibly the rest of the world also, the world is just in bad shape because pollution and global warming has just wrecked everything. And humanity is in bad shape because the internet and social media has taken over people's lives, and people prefer to just stay wired all the time, stay online all the time, just for the bliss that they find on the internet. And as a result, families are destroyed. Not necessarily physically, but like the idea of family practically doesn't exist anymore in this future society. Like there are children, abandoned children all over the streets. These are third generation orphans because their parents were also abandoned, whose parents were also abandoned. It's that kind of world. It's a mess, really. And Tokyo Ghost, the story vilifies technology and the internet. It's like they're the problem in this, and our hero is one of the enforcers that exist in this super souped up internet world. And the enforcer, Led Dent is his name. It's his job to mess up people who in the real world cause problems for the people who just want to stay jacked in all the time, And the thing with Led is that he's also an internet addict. But the real hero in this is his girlfriend, Debbie, who wants to get lead clean. So it sort of becomes her quest to take lead to Tokyo, which apparently has no technology whatsoever. The reason for that is explained in like issue 4 or 5. I'm not going to spoil that, but it becomes a quest which I feel is very poignant, especially for us these days, because the first thing I do every day is check my phone, just to check for updates or whatever. What happened with the world? Did I miss anything? And
Who died?
yeah, who died? Who can I post about this week? And what inappropriate jokes can I
Who
make
died?
today? Who is people gonna pretend they're a fan of today? And nine out of 10 people, or 9 out of 10 kids you see in the mall are just looking at their phone, not talking to anybody, not talking to each other or their parents. And I feel like this book really hits on that. Granted, it exaggerates a lot of it, but a lot of it is scary. It's a very detailed work. Rick Remender did say that he wrote this with Sean Gordon Murphy. They wrote it together. It's not a purely Remender joint and Murphy just drew it. They actually conceptualized this for 4 years before they actually worked on the book, and it shows. It's very rich, and the detail extends more than just the story. It's actually also in the art itself. Have any of you had a chance to read this at all?
Yeah, I read I think the first issue also last year.
And did you like that?
I really loved what I read at the time, but I felt like I wanted a few more issues to pass before I continued, and apparently it finished already. So yeah, I'm gonna pick it up again.
And I'm not sure if this is how I described it last time, but the mashup for this is Princess Mononoke versus Blade Runner.
I think Blade Runner came up before.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure about Princess Mononoke, but I'm pretty sure Blade Runner came up before, and I don't know, man, it's another fun Remender romp. So I mean, it's like I really hope, again, and I said this before, I hope he stays away from the big publishers. Just keep doing your own.
Well, I don't know how this is selling.
Stuff.
I don't know how this is selling, but his success with the indie stuff will dictate how much more indie stuff he can do. Because, Seven to Eternity might do well, Deadly Class might do well, but of course, it's not anything compared to like working on a Spider-Man book.
That's true.
I know that, but he's never worked on a Spider-Man book. I mean, Remender has
just the
always,
Avengers.
Yeah, Avenger worked on Avengers.
X-Men.
Did he work on X-Men?
X-Force.
Yeah,
Worked on X-Force.
Same thing.
Remender has a darker tone, and I felt like bringing that into the Avengers also wasn't. I don't think his style lends that well. I mean, I read that and I'm like, Jesus Lord, where are they taking this? And it was just far too much, I think, for those characters. Remender has a certain style, and it lends well to stories like this. And I think he needs to keep exploring with different stories to perhaps expand his horizons.
Maybe.
I actually read this until it ended.
Oh, you
And-
finished.
Yeah, I finished it.
Cool.
I think I've mentioned it before. The main reason I was reading it was because of the art.
Of course.
Yeah, like 70%. But I think the way they wrote it is very. This is Image, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I can't really say much because you've said most of it. But I think during that time, this was the only book where they had dicks drawn, and
Dicks
nobody.
and boobs
Yeah,
and butts.
and yeah, and nobody on the internet was just complaining about it because it wasn't a DC or a Marvel book.
Oh yeah. Oh, this was coming out just as the Goddamned was starting.
Ah, I think
So
yeah.
dicks and boobs were the flavor of the month, I guess. That's what you mean.
I think when we went, when I was in Manila, Butch showed me
Dicks and
an
boobs.
artist, yeah, Dixon, like the artist edition of this book. Was it this one or was it Joe the Barbarian?
This one.
Can't remember. This one, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Oh,
really.
you have the
It was a
artist
pretty
edition of
big.
this?
Yeah. Who doesn't?
Man, which issue does that cover? Just the first?
It's really worth it because it's 2 issues, and it's the same
Uh-huh.
price as the other artist editions, most of which have only 1 issue in them. So
But how does that work?
It's pretty big.
There are no word balloons in the artist edition, right?
there are word balloons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So did you enjoy this from what you've read?
I didn't read it at all.
Wow.
I looked at the pretty pictures, and that was that.
Nice. That's honesty for you, at least. Lex, did you like this stuff when you wrapped it up?
Yep, I do. If you are into sci-fi stuff, I really recommend this book. Aside from the amazing art, Rick Remender writes a very how do you say uncommon way of story because it's a tragic story, but
Yeah.
it is tragic, but it's still satisfying in the end. It's not your normal happy ending, but in its own sense, it's a happy ending as well.
Yeah, well, if Butch has the artist edition, you can bet that it's something that has a happy ending in it, and dicks and boobs.
Okay.
I wanted to talk about Unworthy Thor this week, but I actually haven't read the latest issue. Sorry, Each. But
Yes, go.
just to set up discussion for next week, for those of you who don't know, Thor currently doesn't have Mjolnir, and he is using an alternate weapon called the Yarnbjorn. Is that correct?
Who?
Yarnbjorn.
I
Yarnbjorn.
love her albums.
And it's an axe, a mystical axe. So we're gonna do a warm-up discussion here before we move on to Butch's panel discussion. In Original Sin, something was whispered to Thor's ears that made him unworthy of wielding Mjolnir, and necessitating the use of Yarnbjorn. Now, what do you guys? The question is, what do you guys think? This could be. You can have funny answers or whatever. Speculation on what you think was whispered to Thor that made him unworthy.
Wait, who did
You're
the?
adopted.
He's
What? What'd you say?
You're adopted.
Why would that make him unworthy?
Who did the whispering to him?
What was that?
Who whispered?
Who did the
whispered?
whispering?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's true. I don't know.
Lady Thor.
Lady Thor.
Really?
She Thor. She Thor.
Are you
Yeah.
are you making a joke or is that true?
No. As far as I can remember, it was a she Thor whispered. Maybe I'm wrong.
Wait,
Wait, was
I
it-
know he was fighting someone, and
Okay.
in that fight, that's when the whole whispering whatever thing happened. I don't think it was actually the female Thor. What do you call this? Although I think what he heard was that he sucked in bed.
That doesn't make him unworthy, does it?
Really, really, really.
That doesn't make him any less of a Thor.
This guy has some weird sense of ego.
That's true.
Something happening. You suck in bed. You don't shatter anyone's worlds. You hold the hammer, but you don't really have a hammer.
You
Priorities
shatter my world,
aside.
DJ.
Priorities aside, I like to think it was Ben Grimm who told him that. You're sucking bread.
What?
It was Ben Grimm who was whispering to him too. You're sucking
What
bread.
is? Oh, okay.
It was Odin.
No, Ben Grimm said it was never.
Oh, it was Nick Fury who whispered into Thor's ear
There you go.
Oh, what did he
There we
say?
What did he say? Oh yeah, it was.
It was Nick Fury.
Okay, we don't know what he said.
He said,
Okay.
"You won't have a third movie."
You need the Hulk's help.
But apparently he is gonna have a third movie.
You need the Hulk's help for the third movie. No, the whisper was the third movie is Planet Hulk. You're just a
Apparently,
placeholder.
it's not really gonna be your movie.
My theory on this was that the whisper had something to do with Mjolnir, possibly hinting at a sentience of some sort. Like, what if this weapon that Thor has been wielding for centuries, he suddenly discovers that the weapon has been conscious of everything he has done for that entire time? Would that do you guys think that would fill him with guilt somehow? Like having knowing that the weapon knows everything that he did?
No, I don't think that's it.
No.
Yeah, because I mean there are whole stories, not whole stories, but there are times that's been written, but he's always trying to be worthy of that hammer because in the first place it was difficult to become worthy of it in the first place. I mean, it's not the first weapon he's ever held. You know, again, it was that axe. It was what came before Mjolnir, and now, and now, and now it's like he's not worthy of the hammer, and they're starting to reveal, you know, it's like all that insecurity that he had about it. So he was always on guard before regards to this thing, because he might just wake up one day and suddenly he's not worthy of the hammer. So I don't think it's something that he's ashamed of. It may be something that it really never occurred to him that what do you call this, that happened, or a part of just who he is. That's why it's racking my brains, because it's like there's no clue.
There isn't really.
I don't think there's a clue that really will tell you what makes him unworthy, because in the first place the dude drinks like fish, he womanizes whatever, and he's had the hammer that whole time.
Well, that's
so
true.
What the hell exactly does unworthy mean in this case? Because this hammer, as the story unfolds in past books, you learn that like in the Mighty Thor with female Thor, you learn that there's a storm in there. It is actually alive.
Okay.
Huh.
There's a living storm inside this hammer.
It's Storm. She's inside.
That
It's Storm's hammer.
Aurora Monroe.
not Aurora.
Yeah, it's her hammer.
There was a cosmic storm. There was a cosmic storm that the Allfather, Odin, he fought a storm. I was like, yeah, okay, how the hell did that go?
How do you know that?
But they fought for days,
He's
whatever,
Bill Paxton.
and he
man.
subdued it.
Oh,
By the way,
R.I.P.
R.I.P. Come on, man. Love that guy. Game over.
It's an F5. Well, you
But,
put her in charge.
But I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. I find the whole unworthy thing weird, and frankly, I can't wait. I feel like they should just get it over with already. I mean, he doesn't have to get his own hammer because he's trying to get another hammer, the ultimate hammer. That showed up in the Unworthy book, and he's trying to get that hammer.
MC Hammer.
Huh?
MC Hammer. And sorry, it's a terrible joke.
Okay.
R.I.P. Bill Paxton.
But I don't know. I have no educated guess about what it could be.
Me neither. I have no
And
clue.
it's driving me nuts. I hate it. Just fucking get it over with already.
Well, it's a journey. We are going to talk more Unworthy Thor next week. Tune in for that when I catch up on the series, and there's going to be more Thor speculation.
More Thor.
More Thor. Yeah. We're going to move on to our final portion of this show, which is
wait. I want to talk about Miles Morales, Spider-Man.
Oh, man. I got shut down.
Wait. Shut the fuck up.
Go on.
You didn't ask, but you guys want to talk about. You usually do that. You guys want to talk about other comics this week?
Yeah.
You didn't even ask how I feel, man.
You're right. How do you feel, asshole?
I feel like talking about another book.
What book?
That's how I
Go
feel
on.
like. No, but quick lang. I mean, I've just been a little disappointed with where Miles Morales Spider-Man is headed lately. I mean, they're trying to pair him up with Spider-Gwen.
Yeah.
Hey, I like it.
I like the idea of it, but I mean, I don't like the art in Spider-Gwen, and there's this whole crossover that's happening, so I'm forced to read the
Interesting.
crappy ass art happening in Spider-Gwen, and all the drama that they've been leading up to in Spider-Man, the Miles Morales story, just took a break in favor of this crossover, and it's like several issues already where they're not progressing the main storyline of Spider-Man after Civil War happened, and then now this storyline with. So I mean, like, I don't know, man. I'm just wondering if Bendis is losing his touch or something, or how much weight does he have in Marvel these days? You know, which I'm guessing is not as much as it used to be.
I honestly don't know, but I have a question. And Butch can probably weigh in on this. Why should we care about Spider-Gwen?
I don't know, really. I feel like it's one of those cash. They're just trying to cash in on
Cash grab.
on this character. I mean, they have an interesting toy out there, but I guess mainly because it's Gwen Stacy alive in some form as a spider character. She's got a really cool costume, but at the same time, it's not Gwen Stacy. You know,
Yeah, I mean-
it's like the experiences of this character is totally different. I mean, why should we care about Spider-Gwen? She's a gimmick, and I don't. Unless you're really interested in her character after reading the books, it's really up to you. But as of the moment, it's not looking good.
I mean, I get that she comes from an alternate reality, but where she's from, was there a Peter Parker?
Yeah, and he's the lizard.
Oh.
Yeah, and what happens is she kills him.
Huh.
Spoiler. Nah, he'll be back.
No, it's not a spoiler. I mean, it's revealed pretty much immediately after you meet the character.
Butch, do you like Spider-Gwen?
She's alright. I guess, but to answer your question, the interesting thing about Gwen, other than she's from a different reality, even the original Gwen, she's still kind of not as finished a character as compared to like what's her name, Mary Jane, because because when they started off, like, it was like a love triangle thing, right? And Gwen was kind of the nerdier girl, and MJ was the party girl, right? And then they killed off Gwen, and then MJ and Peter had this long relationship, and you see the character, she evolved over, I don't know, 20 or 30 years of being published.
Sure.
And she turned into a more well-rounded person, and you saw her growth, blah blah blah. Meanwhile, Gwen still kind of, she's for the most part still a blank slate, and keeping in mind that this is also a new version of Gwen, she it's not that why you should be interested in terms of what's happened before, but she's a new character. Like, think of her as a new character, and if you like her, what she's doing now, she's like a drummer. She's kind of they skewed her a little bit younger in terms of her attitude.
Okay, so she's younger than Peter Parker.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then 616 Peter Parker, yeah.
Okay.
That's why they're pairing her up with Miles Morales. She's like a couple of years older than him lang.
Yeah.
So she's 19.
Right.
Is she the right age to be in Champions?
Ooh.
Yes.
Yeah.
But again, she lives in another universe.
She has this thing where she can travel back
Yeah,
and
she has
forth
a time travel device.
really easily.
No, she has a dimension hopping device. That's what she has.
Yeah.
Yeah, which Miles Morales has too now in
Oh
the
man.
current crossover.
Oh, so they have like
Yep.
they have a long distance relationship technically.
Very long.
But
They're not
traveling
there
together.
yet. They don't. We don't know what the. There's a kiss. We don't know what that was about. Do they have a relationship? I don't know. But it's the relationship has barely even started, if at all.
What does that
Miles
mean?
Morales
Second base?
is in the. Miles Morales is in the middle of a flashback story. He's like telling his friends what happened with both of them. So it's like we don't even know where that relationship is at.
So this is secondhand information.
Yeah.
So I like to think Miles Morales just made it all up.
I mean,
Bragging.
it's quite possible because the story is like all from his point of view. It's like telling the story.
Yeah, and he's just trying to impress Amadeus Cho, is what he's doing.
Gank, that friend of his.
Is
Yeah.
it Genki?
Yeah, or whatever, Ganky. Ganky? Really? That's how you pronounce it? I just always said it was Gank.
It's a nickname.
Alright.
And Gold Balls.
It's like Berlin,
Gold
Burley.
Balls is now
Yeah,
a
Gold
friend
Balls.
and a roommate. Remember Gold Balls from
Yeah,
the
they're roommates.
Uncanny X-Men?
Gold
C3PO.
What?
Go on.
No. Remember Uncanny X-Men? With Cyclops? The team he put together after he became more Brotherhood of Mutant-y kind of
No.
thing.
I don't remember a Gold Balls.
Yeah, the fat mutant that one of the mutants he recruited was this fat mutant that could make gold balls pop out of thin air.
Gripping.
Heavy mutant. Overweight.
Fat.
It's the blob.
What's a brotherhood of mutants without a blob?
That's true. I
It's
ask
just
myself
mutants.
that every day. uh,
He was heavy set.
all right, let's move on to our panel discussion proper this week.
Okay.
Butch, you said you had something you wanted to talk about. Something that kept you up all night.
Yeah. So the thing I wanted to talk about is because there's been a
Gold
change in me,
balls.
guys. There's been a change in me.
Oh shit.
I know. For the way I think about comics, or I approach things with in terms of like the marketing side or the business side of it. I do that a lot. I don't know why.
Oh, Mr. Businessman.
Yeah, here we go.
So I'll try to keep this brief. For the most part, I've been turned away from the big two comics, Marvel and DC. Marvel,
Lately.
yeah, for the past few years, um, for different reasons. Marvel because they tend to they reboot a lot. They do reboots every year now. I think like they all new, all different. Marvel now, whatever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just it's hard to keep track of storylines and characters and blah blah blah. So I thought for a while I thought like other a lot of readers were feeling the same thing as me. But then I looked at the sales charts recently. I never look at sales charts, but I looked at the ones from November and December, and Marvel is still the biggest. They still have the biggest market share over the other companies. It's still like what it's historically been at when DC isn't rebirthing. It's like 40%, 38%. So people are still buying Marvel's titles at the same rate as before, which means Marvel's probably thinking whatever we're doing is working, right? Like, all right, so people are buying, people are leaving for sure, but people are jumping on all these new number ones we come up with every year. And then meanwhile, my problem with DC is I've always thought that the fact that they reboot uh, their whole line every few years, and the fact that they do the same thing with because my one of my gripes with the animated movies is that like they seem to do like soft reboots of the Justice League for different movies.
Hmm.
Like okay,
Yeah.
so they get to reassemble again, and Batman gets to meet Superman again for the first time, and and
Hmm.
it's always interesting, right? These are interesting stories, but I always feel like it's kind of like cheating a little bit. Like, oh, you get to do that again. Okay, fine. Uh, and then you apply that whole concept to the whole comic book line, and it's like, all right, so I don't know, maybe it feels like they don't have to come up with things like decimation or like Spider-Man as Tony Stark, which is like a change in the status quo, which not everyone likes that, but it's kind of what Marvel has to do to keep things interesting. And for me, it feels like DC doesn't even need to do that because every 5 years we're gonna reboot everything, and you're gonna see the same stories done in different ways, and that's inherently interesting. These are classic stories, classic characters, and you're like, and this is like a generalization, right? Like, obviously there are new things too with each reboot. Like Rebirth had Lex Luthor as Superman and Lois Lane as Superman, and that's interesting. But they get to tell these classic stories again. So anyway, all that being said, for I didn't know which approach worked better for me, and as somebody who's been collecting comics for a long time, my gut reaction was no. I think I prefer when these companies respect the continuity that they've built up over decades of publishing, and then recently I've been thinking, okay, so what is it so bad that DC and maybe like Marvel eventually, because when DC does their line wide reboots, it makes a shitload of money. Is it so bad? Like, I what if they reboot every, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, and they create new sales, they create new store, new, I don't know, new. It's something new for the characters to do, even if they've done it before. But then on the other hand, you get a whole new generation of readers, and they get to start in on ground zero with these characters, right? So I don't know, like, what do you guys feel about that? Like, is it okay? Are these? This is gonna like spell the end of the comic book industry, which obviously it won't. Maybe it's fine, and just do little reboots, and you can maintain your little threads of continuity for the older fans, whatever, and things will be okay. I don't know.
Are you asking what our preference is, if it's reboots or maintaining continuity?
Well, I guess I'm asking both. Like, yeah, are you okay with that? Like, uh, what would you prefer? And in case everything is like that, like every few, like the same thing with, I don't know, classic characters like I don't know, Sherlock Holmes or uh Hercules. Like you can reboot them every 10 years, and it's fine. And I mean, nobody cares if the Disney Hercules doesn't act the same way as Kevin Sorbo, So there's you get a new audience, or like they rebooted the Jungle Book, right? And
Yeah.
people liked it, so I don't know.
I'll let either Alex or EJ answer first. Go ahead, guys.
From my point of view, I mean, they've been doing this for a while already. Just in Marvel's case recently, just a little too much. Um, I don't I don't mind it as long as it still makes sense somehow. For me, the new 52 was just too big of a shift. Like they destroyed whole characters there and timelines. It was like that was a mess. For me, that's not how this shit should be done. I mean, I think they alienated so many people, and I stopped reading so many books after that. And I'm only starting to get into DC again after Rebirth. And now Rebirth, now that's a reboot done quite well. And I can't exactly say why. It's just, or maybe I can. It's more because I'm more familiar with what they're doing with this. But now let's just see from my point of view, because I mean, I think I'd like there to be some semblance of balance of these characters being similar to what I've been reading for a while. And frankly, as a fan, I don't like the changes to be too drastic, but I know there has to be something to kick these characters into a certain direction so that it brings them into something more interesting. So I do. I'm open to reboots, but the reboot has to make sense with the continuity.
Sure.
You know, I mean, it can't just be one or the other. There is something that readers have gotten used to, and if you alienate that completely, like what they did with Superman, then you're gonna lose a whole lot of old readers. You know, and there was a whole lot of that I did not read, and I'm just happy that the resurgence happened.
Yes, making it a thing.
These days, I'm not that concerned too much if they are rebooting or if they are sticking with the continuity. I'm mostly concerned if they're gonna put out a good story because I think it's a waste of effort and time if we just keep on focusing on the continuity because eventually they have to change it to gain more readers and to make the books fresh. So I don't mind that much if they reboot the whole universe or they reboot the character as long as it's done properly. For example, when they reboot Daredevil, Mark Waid and Paulo Rivera's run is one of the best things I've read on Daredevil, aside from Bendis' run. So that's one of those things which I don't mind. So um, yeah,
Speaking
as long
of, when they brought back Daredevil recently, well, that was shit.
yeah, so um,
Case to
it
face
it
basis.
doesn't yeah it doesn't really matter if they put out good books. That collection of good books is good for that period of time, and then I think it's collectors who get mostly affected with regard to the continuity because they're collectors and they want things to be in order and stuff. But if most of these days, I'm concerned if I'm just really focusing more if the content is worth it, if they did justice to the character, and if you did enjoy it or if I enjoyed reading it, then that's fine. Like Superman, the new Superman's good.
That's true. My whole thing concerning this whole topic is that, on one hand, there's reboots that allow us to relive stories over and over in different incarnations with different interpretations of the character. And on the other hand, we have the maintenance of 30, 40-year-old continuity that has present stories hinging on past stories. I mean, both have their merits, but of course, there's a third option, and that's just reading indie books, where one
What's that?
writer is not behold. I'm sorry. One writer currently writing a book is not beholden to somebody who wrote the same book 30 years ago. You know what I mean? There's a very cynical definition of continuity that says continuity is the best writer in comics being chained to the worst writer in comics. And that's a very valid reaction.
Some people disagree.
You know, if this is a problem, if reboots and the issue of continuity is a problem, I just bail out. I just not that wanting to stick with the big two. Not that that's a wrong thing. That's fine. That's your fandom. I'm not necessarily talking to Butch, but other people prefer that as well. But in my case, I prefer to just read books where it's one writer from beginning to end, and there's emphasis on end. You know, I'm fine with stories ending. But if you're asking, if Butch is asking for a preference for me, I actually prefer the reboots as well. I'm more okay with it now, knowing that it can be done well.
Right.
Rebirth has showed me that it can be done well. Not perfect, but it can be done.
Yeah, read more image books, Butch.
Never.
But the why exactly was this bothering you, Butch? Or was it bothering you even?
Well, yeah, cause yeah, like I said, cause for the longest time, I was like, I feel like as an old time reader, I guess I had like that belief where like I don't like relaunches. I prefer you just keep doing what you're doing, and don't you don't want people to tread over what others have done before. Like we don't need a new, I don't know, Dark Phoenix Saga or something, right? So I felt it was uncreative, maybe.
Darker Phoenix.
Dark Phoenixer.
I felt it was a little bit uncreative, and and yeah, like I said, like it felt like they were getting away with doing that. And then now I'm thinking,
Sure.
what if this is the new reality? What if, because it works, people, it sells, and DC, and I can only speak about DC because Marvel's doing their own style of thing. Although
Hmm.
I guess Ultimate Universe was sort of a reboot, and then they did Secret War, which was their, I think the first time they did like a line-wide reboot, and I think they noticed the success that DC had. And what
Oh
if
yeah.
that happens? What if DC makes that a regular thing and Marvel follows? Like every 15 years, you get a relaunch of things, right? Or 10 years. Is that okay? Is that okay? Will that drive you as a fan away from comics? Should it drive you away, or should you just? Is it one of those things where because it gets really confusing, right? Like there is a post Infinite Crisis pre New 52 Superman, right? And that's a thing. That's on like
Yes.
Wikipedia. Like that's it. And when I saw that,
Hmm.
I was like, oh, that's really confusing. But maybe just sort of what Alex is saying. Like, just close your eyes. Like, who cares? You know the basics, and just
Hmm.
just read that story.
Just go with the flow.
If it works, yeah. If you like it, then buy it. If not,
Stop
then
being an old man.
I know. I think that's it.
um, we're in a unique position here because we have been reading comics for most of 30 years, right?
Ugh.
And so we have been subject to 4 to 5 reboots. That makes it 4 to 5 versions of all these characters that we need to somehow magically keep in line or organized in our heads. Like, who is post Flashpoint Superman, and how does he compare to pre-crisis Superboy, and who is more powerful and whatever.
Yeah. Who
So
can run faster?
I mean, I understand your frustration here, but it also, I mean, you and me, Butch, we work in comics for the most part. So that comes with that comes an awareness that these are owned by companies, and then the priority is sales, and sales comes from good targeting, and targeting shows us that these are supposed to be for children, but the majority of people who are buying these are 30-year-olds. So there's I feel like our frustration stems from that misalignment or that disconnect. But for me, the best way to deal with it is to stay aware that maybe these are not for me,
Yeah,
especially the rebooted versions. These are not for me, a 30-year-old man.
these are for young girls.
No, I think it's also a reason why these days I stick to the street level characters
Hmm.
Really,
and not much on the
cosmic
big
juju.
superhero teams because the street level characters have a more constrained and let's say finite storyline, and it's more contained compared to dealing with a universe wide event or a story, and it makes a lot more enjoyable because you're restricted to one character, and um, you're not supposed to think about how it affects the whole universe or something. Or you can read image books like what is it? Extremity number one,
Yeah, we'll
released
talk
this
about
week.
that. Talk about that next week, man.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
also want to point out that guys, we are in our 30s. I'm 33 years old, and
I'm
my favorite
25.
my favorite Marvel book right now is Champions. You know, there has to be something off about that. I don't have a book in Marvel that I can relate to currently. It's certainly not Spider-Man, not the Peter Parker Spider-Man. They got rid of Fantastic Four, you know. So there's that. You have anything to add? I think feel like we're wrapping up here.
Not much more. I just think that there always has to be that balance between the reboots and continuity. I mean, they gotta make money. It's a business. It's
Precisely.
understandable. Just don't go haywire like with New 52, man, because that sucks.
Well, keep in mind, guys, Rebirth technically is not a reboot.
Here we go.
It's a status quo.
It's a
We're
giant plot
currently
twist.
still Yeah, we're currently still in New 52.
Are we?
You know? Yeah, they just
Yeah,
renumbered
but
the
they're
books.
they're moving things back. You know, they're
They are.
making these changes.
They are. But they're all the same heroes. The only physical person who was actually replaced was Superman. He was replaced with the pre-Flashpoint Superman. That's it. Everybody from the New 52 is still there. Same Batman, same Wonder Woman. I mean, this Wonder Woman remembers that she was in a relationship with Superman.
Yeah, but it's still a reboot. I mean, it's like they did Crisis before, and after the Crisis, it's still the same characters.
So this is still the universe that they're saying Dr. Manhattan made?
Yeah.
Correct.
So there's only been two DC Universi. Is that true? I don't know. It's all confusing.
Technically, this would be the third.
Okay.
Fourth?
There we go.
Fourth, actually. So there was the classic DC, and then post-Crisis DC, and then post-Infinite Crisis, and then now the New 52.
Oh, Infinite Crisis. Man. Forgot
So
about
you're a
that.
nerd.
Yeah. So this is the fourth DC. As for Marvel, I do not know.
Yep.
But, yeah, that's it. That's it, I think.
Yep.
Dragged you guys into talking to
reading.
Marvel and DC.
That's fine. That'll do it for this week's Tres Comic Heroes episode. Read
Good
more
night.
image books, everybody.
No,
Especially
don't.
you. Read more Dark Horse. Read more, specifically Avatar, the greatest publisher in comics today.
Who?
There's this little known publisher. They do okay. They're called Valiant.
Huh?
Yeah,
Quality may differ.
Xenoscope, guys.
You might have
Xenoscope.
heard.
They're
You might have heard of them, but they're okay. Thanks for joining me, EJ, Alex, Butch, EJ. Good night. I know you fell asleep. Join us again next week. We will talk about Unworthy Thor for sure next week.
Okay.
Alex teased Extremity. That's interesting. And
It
Butch
is.
and I are going to catch you up to date on the recent Seven to Eternity, which I will catch up on as well.
Okay.
That
I
and
want to
other
play
books.
D&D next week, man.
Oh, we're gonna do D&D as well next week, but that'll be on a separate night.
Nice.
And as a teaser for you listeners, currently we may record that.
What?
Eh?
Oh, Lord.
Yes. So you're gonna hear Butch's fantastic voice acting as a gnome bard.
Essentially
Oh,
racist.
God.
Yeah, that's a teaser.
We're gonna be horrible.
All right, good night, guys. Hasta luego. Good night. Love you so much.
Laters.
Hi, guys.